The Young Comedians, Chapter 1, Part 1. Hi, my name is Steve Taylor. I'm going to tell you what happened my first year of high school. A lot of what I'll say is true, but not everything. I had to change everybody's name, and I've messed with some of the places and the dates, but I've kept the most real things. Most of all, I'm going to tell you about Jack. I first met Jack in the late 50s. It was a low time in my teenage life. I was lonely, even though I'm the kind of guy who likes to make jokes and do funny voices. My best friends had moved away, leaving me as a comic without a sympathetic audience. We promised we'd stay friends and visit in the summers, but we didn't. One afternoon in ninth grade algebra, a kid I didn't know took a seat behind me. I only saw a quick flash of big Steve Allen-type horn-rimmed glasses and a weird multicolored shirt as the kid sat down. Then strict Mr. Parkins rapped on the green chalkboard, and class began. 20 minutes later, while Mr. Parkins chalked equations on the board and demanded answers from us like a prison interrogator, the new kid poked me in the shoulder blade. "Here," he whispered, with a breath redolent of cherry lifesavers. "Take it." He pushed a folded sheet of brownish scrap paper against the skin of my left bicep. I didn't want it. I'd been in trouble before in this class, mostly for random wisecracks that my classmates didn't even get. I was a failure as a class clown. I didn't have the timing, so I'd given up. "Take it, Commander Corey," he said in a hoarse, urgent whisper. "It's a message from Space Patrol." I snatched it before Mr. Parkins could see. The half sheet of grimy pulp paper was folded several times. It looked dangerous, and I tried to avoid opening it for several minutes. But it sat there, almost pulsing on my desktop next to my beginning algebra book. At last I couldn't stand it and pushed it half open with my pencil eraser. I saw the corner of a pencil-drawn cartoon. It was a long-beaked bird's head with a buzz cut, just like... Still curious, I opened the drawing all the way flat on my desk. The image was a shock to my nervous system. It was a cruelly effective caricature of Mr. Parkins, so accurate yet grotesque that I nearly exploded with laughter, pressing my fist to my mouth to hold it in. There was his World War II veteran's buzz cut, his beaky nose, his pot belly, encased in a too small plaid shirt, straining the buttons over his midsection. Except it was Mr. Parkins as a creature from outer space, with alien antennae protruding from that buzz cut, tentacle arms and big clawed flipper feet, their scaly skin decorated with polka dots. The drawing was labeled, "Let's Build an Extraterrestrial." "Steve Taylor, do you have the answer?" "No, Mr. Parkins had his chalk poised. He had demanding the final answer to this equation he had been building like a government secret on the board, an equation I had paid no attention to at all while he had painstakingly constructed it. My mind was focused on the cruel but really funny drawing of Mr. Parkins, the Martian, and trying hard not to laugh. "It's solved for Y," he said in a voice that must have once commanded a platoon to go and kill some krauts. I'm sorry, The laugh built inside me like a noxious gas, rumbling my stomach muscles, pressuring my sinuses, destabilizing my breathing, making me want to cough and shout, all the while holding it in while Mr. Parkins looked on with his narrowed, hooded eyes and inquisitive beak, just like the damned drawing in front of me. I couldn't help it. I exploded. Snot came out of my nose, and a donkey's quest for the elusive value of why. I sat through the remainder of class alternately seething and terrified. Mr. Parkins let me off with a surprisingly light reprimand and shoved the drawing into his desk, maybe for evidence, or maybe to join a gallery of such drawings collected from kids over the years, demonstrating his declining image and dignity, each drawing making him look more absurd and pitiful. "Don't do it again, or there'll be repercussions," was the last thing he said. He didn't say what the repercussions might be, a trip to the counselor or time in solitary, but most of all he just seemed tired, and I felt guilty for troubling what must be a dreary life. I emerged from the building with my fists balled, looking for the kid who had done this to me. Two girls in pink and black poodle skirts brushed past me, temporarily blocking my view down the steps. "Stupid boy," one of them muttered, and switched on her transistor radio to rock around the clock. I looked left and right. Some duck-tailed hoods were pitching pennies by the drinking fountain. A group of kids in band uniforms were piling into a red and white DeSoto convertible driven by a mom with a polka-dot scarf tied over her hair curlers. A couple of skinny girls in glasses were fooling with a hula hoop on the lawn, but no sign of the kid. No, there he was, descending the concrete steps, headed for the bike racks. I paused at the top of the steps, breathing in and out, sharply taking him in. He was a goofy-looking kid, a pompadour of long dark hair instead of the crew cuts most of us had, a vaguely Latin face, hinting that he was of a mixed race, like a young Ricky Ricardo with Clark Kent Steve Allen horn-rimmed glasses. His shoes were that strange dark purple known as oxblood, and instead of laces they had a spring-closed leather tongue. I had seen silly-looking shoes like that in the window of Tom McCann, but thought they were for old men. I stomped down the steps after him, continuing to take him in as I went. Most notable was his shirt, which was made of several different pieces of cloth, all of different colors and designs. A palm tree, a monkey, a camel, a hula girl, and so forth, like something a mad scientist with a sewing machine had put together. That shirt pissed me off. It reminded me again of the drawing that had just gotten me in trouble. At the same time, I realized I had another contrary feeling about the drawing. I admired it. I wished I could draw cartoons like that. I'm a comic, but only a joke comic. I don't have other talents like drawing or doing funny song lyrics, things like the multi-talented Steve Allen did. He took the handlebars of a dilapidated J.C. Higgins with dented fenders painted a maroon color like his shoes. He was about to get away. "Hey!" I stopped and bellowed, cupping my hands to my mouth like a megaphone. "Where'd you get that stupid-looking shirt?" He stopped and turned. "What? Did your mother make it? What did you say?" He let go of the bike and walked back towards me. It was the worst insult I could think of, and I realized, swallowing something sour, I was about to have a fight with this kid, a kid I was a little bit afraid of. Maybe because he was the first kid I'd ever actually talked to who wasn't just an ordinary 100% white person. I doubled down. "Did your mother make it?" I repeated. He came up and stared at me, eye to eye, or at least eye to eye with the corrective lenses of his horn rims in between. I smelled the cherry lifesaver odor again. He examined me. "You're the kid I gave the note to, aren't you?" "That's me." We both breathed heavily for a moment. I didn't realize it, but whatever happened in the next few minutes would change the course of my life. "Sorry," he said. "I heard you make a wisecrack in class yesterday. I thought maybe you'd dig my drawing." I searched my mind for the wisecrack. Something stupid, something nobody had laughed at, that had only gotten an annoyed look from Mr. Parkins. Nobody except maybe one kid in the back. I considered, the urge to punch the kid in the face ebbing out of me. "It was a cool drawing," I said. "Parkins has it now." "Really? Maybe you'll have it framed." "Oh, he might." We stood there for another moment, both of us still considering. We could still fight, but I don't think either of us felt like it. There was something else happening. I started to feel it even then. "About the shirt," I said. "Sorry I said anything. If your mother really did make it," I had the feeling she had, "it's an interesting design." That's when whatever it was clicked, and the rest of our lives began. He gave me an enormous grin instead of offering to punch me in the teeth or running away. He said, "No, Bubby boy, I had it woven especially for me at a school for the unfortunate color blind." I stopped, surprised. I recognized that voice. He was doing the Phil Silvers con man voice from Sergeant Bilko. I love doing voices. I have a Bogart voice and a Cagney voice and a Jimmy Stewart voice, but lately nobody to do them for. His Bilko, including the Bubby Boy, was pretty good. "School for the color blind," I returned. "That's right, Bubby. It's deep, deep in the Amazon jungle, where they won't be confused by red and green traffic lights." He waved his arm as though pointing to a real Brazilian rainforest overhead. "That makes the monkeys mad, though. They love the traffic lights. See, here's one." He pointed to a monkey on his shirt front. I couldn't help myself but be drawn in. I stepped closer, looking at the monkey and the other pictures on the shirt. Next to the monkey were a pair of black and white Scotty dogs, like on the Dewar's Scotch ads. "I suppose those are the guide dogs for the color blind?" I asked. "Absolutely right, my lad." He grinned and looked down at the dogs affectionately. "Sad to think of those poor color-blind fellows bumbling around in the jungle, following their black and white Scotty dogs." "Aren't they the dogs from the Scotch whiskey ads?" "Of course they are, but the workers drank all the Scotch and tried to ride the Scotties. A terrible thing." "Terrible," I agreed. Then, inspired, I pointed to a camel on his shirt front. "I suppose the camel is part of your story, too?" "Who?" He peered down at the lapel. "Oh, Hugo, the no-account camel. I keep him there to remind me of the terrible dry season. The workers had to bring bottled water to float our supply rafts. I pulled one raft myself, and Hugo pulled the other. But it became so hard he quit, and I had to pull both rafts myself. There were leeches, terrible leeches." He assumed a Humphrey Bogart African Queen voice. His face became a scowl as he pretended to brush a leech from his Levi so realistically I jumped back. "Watch out," he said. "That crocodile almost got you." "Crocodile? I thought it was a leech." "It was. They get damn big sometimes. Takes an elephant gun to take 'em down." "I don't have one on me." "Be careful then, Shunny," he said, still as Bogart. I fell into his magnetic, goofy rhythm, this fast-talking kid in his Steve Allen Clark Kent glasses and pompadour. I never talked to the kid before. I hadn't even been aware of him until he was sitting behind me today in algebra. But here he was, probably the one kid who had laughed at my wisecrack. I realize now we were doing our first routine, a moment like Martin meets Lewis or Abbott meets Costello. We ran out of pictures on his shirt. "Your shirt has many tales to tell," I said. "Of course, shirt tales," he said. I groaned appropriately. "Or you could say it's made of yarns." "Made of yarns? Hey, that's good. Say, what's your name?" "Steve Taylor." "Well, I'm Jack Banyan." We shook hands formally. He propped his rusty bike against the stand and rummaged for something in the pocket of his multicolored shirt. He pulled out a single bent cigarette. "You want to share a smoke?" "Well, sure." I didn't smoke, but I couldn't wait to see what happened next. This is the end of The Young Comedians, Chapter 1, Part 1. Be sure to listen to Part 2. And remember that Chapter 1 is available on Kindle for only 99 cents.